you emotionally eat? I hope that didn't trigger you. That is such a hard word, such a hard question to be heard at when you emotionally eat. But it is something that we can't just ignore and forget about. And I am super excited for today's guest because she is not just putting on a band-aid, but actually going to help us solve the real problem. Hey there, I'm Esther Rappaport, your host of the Life Books University podcast. I help people rewire their brain to become more efficient and effective. And I am excited for today's show. Now, if there is something in this show that you think someone else could benefit from, then go ahead, press share while you're actually listening to it. Send it to them so that way you'll be helping us reach our goal at the same time of getting 1 million downloads per episode, and you'll be helping them. Now, for today's guest, she lost 50 pounds by identifying and healing the underlying cause of her emotional eating. Tricia has spent over 30 years researching the hidden cause of food addiction. She's also the author of Heal Your Hunger and the host of a podcast, the Heal Your Hunger Show. Thank you so much, Tricia, for being here. I'm excited to be speaking with you. You want to start by telling us something you did as a kid that your parents still laugh about today?
I did as a kid that my parents laugh about. Well, I guess one of the things I used to do was, I don't know if they laughed, but I used to do May Day baskets, on May 1st. I used to love to create little baskets of flowers and then go to people's houses and leave them and run away. You ring the doorbell and then run away. It's kind of an old tradition. And so, yeah, I did that for years. I just always did May Day baskets. It was really sweet and the whole neighborhood loved it.
You love flowers.
Yeah, I love flowers.
Type like you have flowers all over your house or not so much?
Well, one of my powder room has the wildest flower wallpaper, like bright pinks and greens. And it's really wild when you walk in there.
Cool. Okay. Now let's start by hearing your own personal story on how you got involved in being an emotional eating expert.
Sure. As far back as I can remember, I was obsessed with food. So food was a big highlight for me. And I love to cook and eat and go out to dinner and serve food to other people, play restaurant. So it was a big highlight for me as I got older, I started to gain weight. So that was really not so cool. So I love to eat, but I didn't like what food did to me. So I gained weight very easily. And by age 21, I was 50 pounds overweight. So I had a lot of fat and I had this roll in my tummy that I would scrunch up in my hands and imagine cutting off, like you cut fat off the side of a steak. And I thought, oh, maybe I should join the army where they'd force me to exercise at boot camp because I hated exercise. So some pretty crazy thoughts. Like I thought, well, maybe I'll get a disease where I automatically lose weight, because I basically would try to diet, but I'd only be able to diet for a couple weeks and then I'd blow it. Like I always would blow it. And so basically I felt very hopeless of a young age. Like in my 20s, I was just like, this sucks. I can't keep doing this. I'm up and down. I had like 5 different sizes of pants in my closet because I never knew what size I'd be. So I was up and down all the time. And I basically, hit a wall and I thought there's got to be a different and better way. And sure enough, there was. And the better way was to get off the diet track and start addressing and healing emotional eating. So I had a mentor show me how to do that. And my work is based on what he showed me. And I worked together with him for a long time. For decades, we helped other emotional eaters and people with addiction. So it had a lot to do with, digging into the addictive personality and how to heal that. But my work is specific to food. Because I struggled so much with food and weight, and it was so frustrating for me. So I'm very blessed. I created a step-by-step system to help emotional eaters. I do it online, for women all around the globe, and it works, which is awesome. And I love what I do, and I do it morning, noon, and night.
Oh, wow. Okay. Now let's before we get into all your 7 steps and understanding really about it, first of all, I love it because I'm so big into getting into the root cause. Don't just put on a band-aid, right? So in all aspects of life, whether it's productivity or whether it's antibiotics or whatever it is, sometimes we need a band-aid till we get to the hospital, but like we need to really deal with the root cause.
Absolutely.
Now, do you mind sharing with us what your like root cause, like why were you emotionally eating, and what do you
Sure.
find the most common ones?
Yeah. So here's the deal. There is no one root cause. So everybody's like, I know why it is that I struggle with food. It's because I was abused as a kid. It's because my mom left me. It's because my dad, remarried, whatever. So, it's never one thing. And so, there's no question lots of emotional eaters have trauma. Okay. I was sexually abused as a kid. That didn't help, obviously. Like it certainly contributed. A lot of people who struggle with food and weight, if they have excess weight on their bodies, it does come from some kind of trauma as a kid. But what happens as kids is that one thing spawns a number of coping mechanisms. So if you have like an alcoholic parent, for instance, in order to get through that, in order to survive your childhood, you're going to be very good at you're going to be hyper vigilant. So you're going to have your antenna up all the time looking for moods. Like, is dad in a good mood or in a bad mood? Is mom going to be throwing things tonight? It's like you get hyper vigilant, then you get really good at shape shifting so you don't get your ass kicked, or you don't get hurt in some way. So you get really good at people pleasing. So you're always like hip to other people's energy. You're outward focused. You don't have a strong sense of yourself. So self-esteem becomes an issue, especially if you're told terrible things. That's not true for everybody. But the point is, when we try to cope with tough circumstances as kids, it spawns many different coping tools that worked as a kid. Like being a people pleaser and making people laugh was how I coped as a kid with a lot of stress in my family, stress and unhappiness. But bringing that trait into my adult life ended up backfiring on me. Being a people pleaser has major consequences, and I've never met an emotional eater that wasn't a people pleaser. It comes with the territory. We're outward focused. We're trying to get the atta girls or atta boys from outside of us, and so we like run circles around other people. We're always saying yes. We're always taking on extra work. We're overdoers. We're doing all the time, and that causes overeating. Like when you're stressed out, your cortisol levels are high. It makes you hungry. You grow belly fat. It's hard to take off. Metabolic syndrome, and also you're resentful because nobody's ever as pleased as you plan on them being. So you're kind of like feeling sorry for yourself, and then you go and you have the I deserve it binge. Okay, so this is how these coping tools turn ugly, basically. So that's an example of how it's not like the one thing as a kid. It's like the one thing turned into a monster because of all these coping tools, which as a kid were survival tools. As adults, they're dysfunctional ways of showing up that lead to the stress that causes stress eating.
Yeah. Gosh. So it's like a lot. It's not like there could be also different reasons, different phases. Once you create this coping mechanism, right? Like some people go the opposite end, like they don't eat and become an anorexic or use other like emotional bulimia or other stuff to like their coping mechanism, different ways, different things. So, and then as more challenges come up and more things happen in your life, then you end up overeating more and just because
it's true. And undereating and overeating to me are all emotionally driven. Okay. So if I'm trying to control something like my eating, it's probably because it's out of control. Okay. So people who are anorexic or they do a lot of restricting, they're trying to control something that feels out of control to them. Okay. Which is their eating. And this is why anorexics often lose the ability to restrict, and then they become bulimics, and then ultimately become overeaters and they gain weight. So there's many different iterations of this condition. But to me, the umbrella term emotional eating is apt because whatever we're doing with food, when it's driven by our emotions, that's basically emotional eating, whatever form it takes.
Yeah. So you've worked with people on all spectrums, like in all areas, or?
Yeah. It doesn't matter. It's all, to me, the obsession with food, the obsession with weight, those are coming from a deeper place. We got to go deeper and deal with them. I mean, I've been both sides of the spectrum. I've been fat and I've been too skinny, and both are super painful and dysfunctional, but neither of them are the real issue. They're symptoms of a deeper cause.
Yes. Okay. So how do we solve the actual cause?
Yeah. So there's a lot of, it's sort of a many pronged approach. I mean, I don't teach people what to eat because they're not stupid. Like typically people who've been trying to diet have been, reading a lot of books, taking a lot of courses. Like they're pretty clear on what health, and healthy eating looks like. They just can't follow through on what they know, which is incredibly frustrating. You're like, I know what to eat, but I won't do it. Like I don't eat it. And so it's really important for people again, take the focus off the food and weight. That's a symptom. Let's deal with the underlying causes. So part of it is stress. Okay. So my experience is the reason why diets don't work is because people will just take away all their favorite foods and go on a restrictive diet, but they don't have new ways of coping with stress. Diets don't give you that. And so it's really important that we address our stress, we address our racing minds. Okay. And so basically, what we need to do is we need to de-stress, and part of it is stopping the personality traits I mentioned, the people pleasing. People pleasing causes stress when we're doing for other people, when we're not putting our self-care first, which self-care is like an unknown concept for emotional eaters because overeaters tend to be overdoers. Okay. Undereaters tend to be overdoers. Basically, we have to address the way we're living. I often say it's a living problem, not an eating problem. Again, the eating is a symptom of how we're living. So we have to start the day with some kind of morning routine that can help us get still and quiet and centered. Okay. And again, this is a different thing, but I teach my clients this, and I'm always beating the drum of self-care because if we don't put ourselves first, we don't have a lot to give other people. It's like the trite, but very apt term, putting your oxygen mask on first, like on the airplane. It's true. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're running on empty all the time and you can't take care of other people. Plus you're refueling with crappy foods, snack foods, quick foods, coffee and sugar and chocolate and weed, whatever it is, that's going to cause your body to break down. That is not sustainable. We have to create new healthy ways of dealing with stress, of, filling our tank. And I say, start the morning with either a meditation, prayer, a walk in nature, something that reading, yoga, breathing exercises, something that can get you still and quiet and tuned in. So much of the time as emotional eaters, we're checked out. Okay. And part of it's because we don't want to feel. We don't want to be present in our bodies, but we have to be. You can't stay on the run and not be using food destructively. Like we have to tune into our emotions. We have to get emotionally intelligent. What's really going on? What am I really feeling? My boyfriend just left for 3 weeks on a research trip. I'm like, oh my God, I feel empty. Like he's gone. There's this big hole, and I feel grief. So I'm being extra sweet to myself. I'm taking care of myself. I'm tuning into that. Otherwise I will unconsciously eat if I don't tune into the fact that I have grief and I have sadness, and so I have to get really clear on what's going on for me emotionally. But starting the day with some kind of centering and grounding, habit can help us get more in tune emotionally. It can help reduce our stress. And it also gives us resources we can draw on throughout the day when life gets busy.
Yes, yes. Now that also, like finding a new coping mechanism it's like finding a way healthier way to deal with things. But at the end of
Yes.
the day, it's not actually dealing with the problem. We still have that problem there.
But it's much easier to deal with. So much of our problems are created by our being reactionary. Okay. It's like we hear sad or scary news, or our boss throws us something, a curveball, and we react. And before you know it, we're in the kitchen shoveling food in. Okay. And so what what starting the day in some kind of meditation or calming practice does is it slows down and it creates the ability to pause when you hear news that's startling or scary or, can throw you off your games. I hear time and time again, ST, I hear people say, I was doing good. I was eating good until the pandemic happened, until I lost my job, until my boyfriend left me, until. And it's like, okay, life's going to keep coming. Like we can't stop things from happening. So what we can't have control. We don't have control over the world and circumstances of the pandemic, the war in Ukraine. We cannot control those things. What we can do is start creating peace within, so that instead of reacting, we're responding. We've got a little pause time between hard news and how we're going to take action. And so, but whereas when we don't take that time for ourselves, when we're running on adrenaline all the time, we've got a knee-jerk reaction. And too often those reactions are to reach for food.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally. Okay. So I want to go into how this has to do with relationships. But before that, I want to go quickly through the 7 steps that you help people with.
Okay, it might not be so quick. So, I'll pick out a couple of them. How about, because there are a lot of them, and I do lay them out in my book and in my programs. But basically, all the 7 steps start with C. So they're the 7 C's for healing. A few of the really important ones are like connection and community. So much of the time, we're not hungry for food. We're really hungry for connection. And in our relationships, we can be hungry for connection, and as emotional eaters, we tend to crave deep connection, but we're often around people who aren't capable of that. Okay. And so we end up feeling empty. And so this is something to watch out for. If somebody's an emotional eater, and by the way, if somebody's like, what the hell is she talking about emotional eating? I have a quiz on my website that can help a person determine if they're an emotional eater or even a food addict. The quiz will tell them where they are in the spectrum. I think we're all emotional eaters. We all have the ability to go overboard now and then, to anesthetize our emotions with carby, sugary, whatever, big meals, sugary foods. So take the quiz, find out if you're an emotional eater or a food addict or somewhere in between. But the bottom line is, as emotional eaters, we crave, there's a craving, there's an emptiness to us that we fill with food, and food doesn't cut it. So we keep filling it with food because we never feel satisfied. Food will not satisfy what we're really craving. And what we're craving is connection and community. So I do all my programs in community. So on Zoom, there's a bunch of people, women looking at each other from all over the world. And we all have this crazy connection with food. Like we all have done crazy, embarrassing things with food, overeaten, gained weight, or, whatever it is. We've done some crazy secretive things with food. So when we're in community with other emotional eaters, there's an immediate connection. It's very healing to our heart and soul. We have to feed ourselves what we're really craving. In my experiences, we crave depth of conversation. So I used to get so bored at parties.
Oh yeah.
Right? Where everybody's chit-chatting and it's just this stupid talk. Okay. Where it doesn't make a bit of difference. It's cute. Maybe it's, ironic, whatever, but it doesn't feed our soul. And I would often go either overeat at the party or come home and binge because I felt empty. So I have to have intentional connection with people who can go deeper with me. And that's what I do in my calls is we feed each other's soul by having a deeper conversation about our emotions, about what we're feeling, about how we process, feelings and experiences. And that feeds my soul. And I do that specifically with, my programs are all specific to emotional eaters, and we all connect, whatever our symptom is. Not everybody's overweight. Some people, are restrictors, but bottom line is when we feed ourselves and nourish ourselves at a deeper level, then we're not hungry. We need to heal our hunger by giving ourselves what we really crave. So connection and community is one of the 7 steps in my book. I do have the only suggestions I make around food. There is a step called clean eating. Clean eating to me is something I call 3 meal magic, which is eating 3 meals with nothing in between. And the reason why this is so vital is because we're used to snacking all day, just kind of unconsciously going into the refrigerator, what's there to snack on. It's this constant thing with us. And so we're numb all day long. Like, in order to heal our hunger, we have to feel like our feelings. We have to feel our emotions. So if you eat 3 meals and you don't eat in between, first of all, that's game changing for a lot of people, like to not be snacking all day long. And you start to realize what an emotional eater you are when you're like not going to the refrigerator in between meals. You're like, whoa, like normally I'd be going to the refrigerator like 5 times, between lunch and dinner, looking for something. And it's like, wow, how much like unconscious eating we really do. So that can be a game changer right there. But what it really does is helps us get access to our emotions, because we have to know what we're feeling. If I were eating as soon as my boyfriend left, to go away, if I just ate, I wouldn't know what grief was. I wouldn't know the sadness, but I want to feel it so I can move through it and not have it drive me to eat. So again, that 3 meal magic is just a nice way to put some space between the meals. Nowadays, health advice is on that same page. Like, it's no longer about eating many small meals a day. That used to be like wisdom back in the 90s, and early 2000s. So nowadays, people are really clear that you need to let your body digest. And when you're constantly feeding it, it doesn't have time to do that. So on a physical level, it's super helpful as well. But to me, it's mostly about really starting to feel a little bit of hunger. It's not going to kill you to feel a little bit of hunger, because there are real feelings there. And you can also determine when it's emotional and physical, because there's a difference. But to me, anytime I have a hunger pang or feel hungry, I'm like, oh no, it's physical. It's absolutely physical. And I'll fool myself, or I'll try to. I don't buy into it anymore. But when I feel hungry, I can stop and ask myself, what's really going on? And this is how we start to tune in. But if I'm snacking and numbed out, I'll have no idea.
Yeah. And as you do it, the more you're conscious of it, the more you realize how that hunger feels different for when it's physical or emotional.
Totally. Yeah. And you can also talk to yourself and be like, you know what, girl, you had a good breakfast. Lunch is coming soon, 11:30, 12:30, whenever your lunchtime is. Like, you're going to be okay. Like, you're actually not starving.
Nothing's going to happen if you don't eat for an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now, how do you see emotional eating affect marriages?
Oh my gosh, in so many ways. And we don't think about it. We think, oh, I'm just uncomfortable in my body. But when we feel uncomfortable in our body, I know I didn't want to have sex. Like, when I didn't like my body, I didn't want to be touched. I didn't want to be seen with the lights on. I wasn't into it. I couldn't also feel my libido. Like, when I was stuffed or binging, I didn't feel horny. I just didn't want to have sex. I was not interested, like, closed for business. And that is not good for a relationship, And it's hard on spouses. It's so hard on spouses because they just want us and they want to be close with us. But we have this internal dialogue, like, I'm fat, don't touch me. I'm not worthy of being touched. I don't know why this person even likes me, right? It plays so much on our self-esteem and our sense of worth. And it totally impacts the relationship. Not to mention moodiness. Emotional eaters they're on a roller coaster ride, right? When we're eating healthy, we're like on a high, or a new diet, we're on the new diet high, but then we blow it and we're like a Jekyll and Hyde. We're like a totally different person, right? And it's then we're mad at ourselves, and then we can, be bitchy when we're beating ourselves up. We tend to beat other people up as well. Like the other people get the spillover of what we're doing to ourselves. So if we're like ragging on ourselves, we can get bitchy and snappy as well. Or when alternatively, when we're on a diet, sometimes we're bitchy because we don't have our sugar and we're hungry, we're hangry. And then we're biting somebody's head off because we don't have our food, and it's, and we take it out on them. So it can totally affect our relationships. And it's, also Food is such an obsession. Like when I was obsessed with food and what I was going to eat and when I was going to eat it and how I was going to get rid of it and, and where I was going to get it and how could I get more without looking like a hog, it's like, it's a constant 24/7 conversation in my head. Well, that sucks the energy out of a relationship. You can't be present with somebody when all you can think about is food. You can't be present with your kids when all you think about is food. So, oh my gosh, so many different ways it impacts a relationship. And it's like we have a lover. It's like we have a secret lover. Okay. We don't give our spouse all our time. We are too obsessed with food to really even be present with that person. And that's just not fair.
Oh, yeah, totally. It's like, I think of it like as food, like this dead thing gets way more attention than like the person we love most.
Yeah.
Gosh. Okay. Now, do you think it plays out differently in like how emotional eating shows up in men and women?
Yes. I think that women tend to be, not to oversimplify or generalize, but women are more emotional, and I do have men who reach out to me, but 90% of the people I hear from are women, you
Yeah,
know?
it's like I don't know, like statistically, but my guess is going to be that it's more a woman's problem.
Yeah. Well, men,
Yeah,
there's a jillion obese men on, on our planet, right?
yeah,
So it's definitely a problem, but men think diet, I mean, women think diet too, until they've been on like 20 diets and they're like, okay, maybe I need to take a different tack on this. But they are more emotional and they probably do more emotional eating. So yeah, I mean, I wish I could help more men, but I just don't hear from them.
yeah, yeah. Now, how would you suggest to a partner? Let's say they're not an emotional eater, but their partner is. What could they do to support them if they're, let's say, not ready to try something like what you do?
I would recommend my book. I have one friend who gave my book to her husband and he lost 50 pounds. He never even contacted me. But he's written on my TEDx talk. He wrote a comment on my TEDx talk. He wrote a comment on Amazon for my book. He loves my work. I have to coach women. Like most women can't just read the book and get it. But for some men, it actually works to just read my book, And so, and I highly recommend that. And it's a good thing to recommend because a lot of times people, as emotional eaters, as somebody who struggles with food and weight, people will often give us advice and say, oh, why don't you eat less and exercise more, as if we hadn't thought of that. That's really brilliant. So, they give us advice that we already have heard, and it's usually around the physical symptom of food and weight, and weight loss, but it doesn't work. 98% of all diets fail. So when doctors and therapists and spouses say, hey, here's a good diet, or try intermittent fasting, or try this, 98% of the time, it's not going to work for them. And so they're really discouraged. And so part of them shuts down and doesn't want to hear about another suggestion. Okay. It's like, I don't want to fail again. But my book offers a different solution, and that's to address and heal emotional eating. So I find giving a book to somebody saying, hey, I heard this gal on a podcast, this might be of interest to you. It's not about weight loss. It's about your relationship with food, and that's a great foray into just a whole nother journey that's not about beating yourself up, trying to restrict and, get a handle on it through control.
Yeah, I'm like thinking of a couple. I know there's one by me. He was like extremely obese. Like think of the most obese person, like very extreme. And she was by me, and she came to like adjust her husband's plate, every single thing that she was doing. She was like saying what he could eat, what he couldn't eat. And I was like, girl, as soon as he leaves this, he's gonna go and find a restaurant and buy something else, or go to like a Wawa or Quick Check and like pick up something. Like, what are you actually doing here? So
Yeah.
I don't know, like if you have any suggestions. I'm like, it's so hard. Like, you want to like control your husband, but you can't really control them or your wife or whoever it is. But like any suggestions besides like more on like an everyday level, like get the book and then like what else?
Yeah. And also don't manage. Just don't manage. You can't manage somebody's addiction. It's impossible. Like they're not, it is an addiction. Like food addiction is real, I mean, you have to eat 3 times a day, which is why it's a really hard addiction. It was probably, to me, it's the hardest to overcome because you have to eat. It's not like alcohol. You can put the plug in the jug and never see it again. It's like, no, you have to eat 3 times a day. You have to take the tiger out of the cage, pet the kitty, and put it back in the cage. That's hard. Yeah. So just being loving and compassionate and unconditionally accepting, no matter what weight, you can express concern, but it's delicate because people don't intend to be overweight. They don't intend to destroy their health, but they are under the influence of an addiction for real, and so just being, it's you aren't going to be able to manage them. They don't feel like they can stop eating, they need a better solution. To me, getting off, like I literally tell my clients to throw their scale away. It's like, stop taking take the focus off the food and weight, deal with the real stuff, get happier, deal with the ways that you feel bad about yourself, be in community with other people. So you have some laughter, you have some identification with people who understand the struggle. If somebody doesn't understand the struggle, there's very little they can do.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so before we get to our final question, where could we connect with you and learn more about you?
My website's a good place to start. It's healyourhunger.com, HEAL, and you can take the free quiz on there. So it's healyourhunger.com. Take the free quiz, start there, learn what your personalized score is. And then I do have a podcast called The Heal Your Hunger Show. So subscribe there. I do a lot of shows just for my own personal experience of overcoming emotional eating. Also, I would say Instagram, Tricia Nelson _, TikTok, Tricia Nelson _ at the end of the N and Nelson.
Amazing. Okay. So final question that gets asked to everyone is, how would you describe an extraordinary relationship without using love, trust, or connection?
Respect. Do you want a lot of words or just one?
However you want to describe it.
I would say respect, chemistry.
Yeah.
And laughter.
It's great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Tricia. This was fun. This was informative. And I know that we're going to have to now go to your website to take that quiz to see where we're currently at. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
That's all for this episode of the Life Fix University podcast, but I have a huge favor to ask of you that will not only support the show, but will also help the people you love most. We are striving for 1 million downloads by the end of 2025, and we can't do this without your help. If you love this episode, please share it with 2 of your family and friends so they too can rewire their brains to have an extraordinary marriage. It was awesome spending time with you, and I'll see you on the next episode.